The challenge begins. The twin suns of planet Threxia burned high in the sky. The grand arena was full. Thousands of alien spectators gathered, cheering and shouting, their voices shaking the metal stands. This was no normal match. Today, something unusual was happening. For the first time in Threxian history, a human was stepping into their sacred combat ring. His name was Jack. He had no armor, no weapon, and no expression on his face. He walked slowly, calm, as if he didn't care about the crowd or the danger. The aliens booed him, throwing things at his feet. To them, humans were weak, soft, and unworthy. Across the arena, the gate opened with a loud screech. She entered. General Vora, the proud warrior of Threxia. Over 8 feet tall, her blue skin shimmered in the light. Her long claws clicked as she walked. She wore silver battle armor and a confident smirk. She had never lost a fight. When she saw Jack, her eyes narrowed. "This is a joke," she growled, her voice echoing. "You dare send me a human?" Jack said nothing. Vora laughed and pointed at him. "Come on, little thing. Show me why you're here." The crowd roared with laughter. Jack stood still. His eyes didn't blink. He simply watched her. Vora circled him, poking his chest with one long claw. "You're not even scared, are you?" Still, Jack didn't move. Then she slapped him hard across the face. "Fight me, coward!" Even the crowd went quiet for a second, but Jack didn't lift a hand. Vora grinned. "You must be broken or stupid." She shoved him again. "Say something." Jack's eyes locked with hers. Slowly he whispered, "You don't want me to fight, that?" Made her pause. Just for a moment, she tilted her head. "Oh? Why not?" Jack stepped forward. "Just a little. Because I don't play games," he said softly. Before she could react, the gong sounded. The match had begun. Vora lunged at him with speed and power, her claws slicing the air. Jack dodged to the side just barely. His movements were fast but clean. He didn't attack. Not yet. Vora struck again and again, missing each time. She growled with frustration. "Fight me, you coward!" Then it happened. Vora moved in too close. Her arms swung wide, and Jack stepped forward. In a blink, he grabbed her wrist, pulled her down, and bit her shoulder. Hard. She screamed. The crowd went silent. Her armor cracked under his teeth. He didn't just bite. He marked her. Vora fell back, holding her arm, her eyes wide, her breath sharp. She looked at him not with anger, but with shock. "What was that?" she whispered. Jack wiped his mouth and stood tall. "That was your warning," he said. "Don't poke me again." The arena remained dead quiet. No one had ever seen something like this. Vora, the undefeated warrior, had been bitten by a human, and not in defeat, but in dominance. She stood frozen, confused. Her pride shattered. Jack turned away, walking calmly back to his side. He didn't gloat. He didn't laugh. He just stood there, waiting. The match wasn't over, but something had changed. Vora felt it deep in her bones, and the crowd began to murmur. Did he win? What just happened? Is this human dangerous? The officials hesitated. No one knew what to do. But the bite mark was real. And Vora, the arrogant warrior, was now silent. The human hadn't used fists. He hadn't thrown a single punch, but he had taken control in a way no alien had ever seen. Cliffhanger. As Jack stood still, his eyes glowing with strange calm, Vora whispered to herself, "What are you, human?" The bite hurt across. The arena. Vora's scream cut through the air like a sharp blade. The crowd, once wild and loud, froze in place. Thousands of aliens stared in disbelief. Some leaned forward as if trying to understand what had just happened. The human didn't roar or raise his fists. He just stood there, calm, silent, like nothing had happened. But the bite mark on Vora's shoulder was real and glowing. Her armor had sensors, and now those sensors blinked red. A small light on her chest plate began to pulse rapidly. It wasn't a damage warning, it was a bond alert. Something old, something sacred in Threxian blood, had been triggered. She touched the spot where he bit her. Her breath shook, her muscles trembled. This wasn't just pain, it was confusion. Her body, trained in war, began to respond in a way she had never felt before. Not to fear, not to injury, but to submission. No, she whispered to herself. It can't be. Across the arena, high above the crowd, the royal chamber doors opened. The Empress of Threxia, tall, elegant, eyes like twin moons, stood and watched the human below. Her voice came through the speakers, soft but powerful. Bring him to me. The crowd gasped again. No outsider, no non-Threxian, had ever been summoned by the Empress in the middle of a fight. Vora's pride shattered further. She was supposed to be the champion, the symbol of strength. And now, this human had been chosen. Guards rushed toward the arena floor, but Jack raised a hand. I'll go, he said simply. He didn't look back at Vora, but she couldn't look away. As he walked past her, something happened that made the whole arena fall into stunned silence again. She bowed, her head, only for a second, but everyone saw it. The proud general, the undefeated warrior, lowered her gaze to a human. Inside the royal hall, the silence was heavier than stone. Jack stood before the Empress. Her dress shimmered like ice, her face unreadable. You bit her, she said. Jack didn't answer. Do you know what that means, on our world? Jack met her eyes. I didn't do it to follow your rules. The Empress tilted her head. And yet you triggered one of our oldest codes. Jack remained calm. Maybe your codes wanted to be challenged. The Empress studied him for a long moment, then slowly smiled. Interesting. She turned to her council. The human will remain under observation, but he will not be punished. One of the council members stood. He assaulted a general. The Empress raised her hand. He dominated a general. There's a difference. Back in the arena, Vora sat in a medical chamber staring at her reflection. Her shoulders still glowed faintly. It would take time to fade, if it ever did. She rubbed the mark and whispered, Why do I feel this way? Another warrior entered, her friend Sarek. The Empress spared him, she's curious. Vora didn't respond. Sarek looked at her with concern. Be honest. You felt it too, didn't you? The shift? The moment he took control? Vora clenched her fists. It was just a trick. Sarek shook her head. No. He chose not to fight, that was real strength. He knew exactly what he was doing. Vora stood and looked out the window, toward the palace. I need to see him again. Summoned by the Empress. The royal chamber was not just beautiful, it was terrifying. Walls of glowing crystal shimmered with soft violet light. Alien plants twisted up from the floor, pulsing slowly like breathing lungs. The room was silent, yet alive. Watching. Jack stood in the center, no chains, no guards. Only the Empress. She sat on her throne of star metal, her silver eyes sharp and calm. Her face was unreadable, her body still like a statue. But Jack could feel it, the weight of her presence. She was not just a leader, she was a predator. Human, she said finally. What are you? Jack replied with no fear. I'm just a man. The Empress smiled, but it wasn't kind. You bit one of my best warriors. In our world, that is not an insult. It is a claim. Jack didn't move. I don't claim anyone, he said quietly. Yet she is marked, and she hasn't stopped shaking since. Jack said nothing. The Empress rose and walked toward him slowly. Your kind are weak, emotional, soft. But you acted with purpose, you knew what the bite would do. Jack shook his head. I just wanted her to stop touching me. The Empress laughed softly. Honest. Bold. Dangerous. She leaned in close. There's something in you. Something we don't understand, and that's why you're still alive. Jack didn't blink. Are you afraid of what you don't understand? The Empress stood tall again. No. I study it. She clapped her hands. A door slid open behind Jack. Vora stepped in. No armor, just plain black training cloth. Her eyes locked on Jack's. Something had changed. Less fire. More hunger. The Empress looked at both of them. You will train together. You will live together. You will learn. Jack raised an eyebrow. Why? Because, she said, you're going to fight for me. Later that day, Jack followed Vora through the glass halls of the palace. The city below glowed with alien lights. Flying crafts buzzed past, but inside everything felt too quiet. I don't need you, Vora said without turning. Jack replied calmly, Then why do you keep following me? Vora stopped and turned sharply. Her voice dropped low. Because ever since you bit me, I feel different. Unstable. Jack stepped closer. Maybe you were never stable, she growled but didn't strike. You think you're clever? She whispered. Jack smirked. I think I'm careful. There was silence between them. Then, Vora looked away. They're watching us, all of them. They want to see if I break, or if you do. Jack nodded slowly. Then let's give them a show. That night, in the shadows of the warrior quarters, Sarek, Vora's friend, met with a high-ranking commander. He's dangerous, she warned. The commander frowned. He's just human. No, Sarek said. He's something else. He touched her mind, not just her body. The commander narrowed his eyes. Then we must control him, or end him. Meanwhile, in their shared training room, Vora watched Jack from across the mat. He stretched slowly like a predator preparing for a quiet hunt. You don't fight like a human, she said. Jack responded softly. That's because I never learned how to lose. She stepped forward, standing close. You marked me. He looked into her eyes. You let me. Her breath caught in her throat. For a moment, they didn't move. Then a voice rang out from the speaker above. Combat trial begins now. No rules. No mercy. Cliffhanger. The doors slammed shut. Dozens of armored warriors flooded the chamber. Not a training exercise, but a setup. Vora turned to Jack, eyes wide. They're trying to kill us both. Tension turns to fire. Red lights flashed in the ceiling above. Alarms echoed down the stone walls of the training chamber. The floor shook as heavy boots marched in fast. One by one, armed warriors surrounded them. They weren't there to teach. They were there to eliminate. Vora backed into Jack without thinking. This wasn't supposed to happen, she whispered. Jack didn't speak. His fists clenched. His eyes stayed calm. He counted them. 12 armored fighters, all Threxian elite guards, trained killers. A voice came from above, cold and robotic. Unauthorized bond detected. Threat level high. Eliminate and reset. Vora's eyes widened. Reset? They're going to wipe our minds, Jack whispered. Not mine. One of the guards charged. Jack moved like lightning. He grabbed the alien by the neck, spun him, and threw him into two others. Their armor cracked on impact. Another guard aimed a shock staff. Jack ducked, rolled, and swept his leg, knocking the weapon from the alien's grip. Vora blinked in shock. You fight like a shadow. Jack didn't stop moving. I told you I don't play games. Then something changed. Vora let out a scream, not of fear, but rage. She leapt into the air, slamming both feet into a warrior's chest. Her claws tore through another's helmet. She moved like thunder now, beside Jack, not against him. It was chaos. But in the chaos, they were perfectly in sync, two bodies. One rhythm, strike, dodge, block, bite. Minutes passed like lightning. Soon, only Jack and Vora stood. The floor was littered with broken weapons and groaning soldiers. They both breathed heavily. Not out of fear, but from something else. Heat. Vora looked at him, eyes burning. I felt you, She whispered, "In my blood. When we fought together, it was like our minds linked." Jack didn't answer, but his silence said more than words. She stepped closer. "You bit me to stop me. But now, you've awakened something." He tilted his head. "What? Do you want now?" Vora didn't smile. She growled, "I want to feel it again." Meanwhile, high above in the Empress's chamber, the Empress watched the entire fight through a glowing screen. She turned to Sarek. "Well?" the Empress asked. Sarek nodded. They moved as one. No hesitation. The Empress's voice was low. "That's not normal. Not for humans. Not for Threxians." Sarek frowned. "Then what are they becoming?" The Empress turned toward the stars. "Something new, something dangerous." She tapped her long fingers against the screen. "Double the Watchers. I want them studied. Closely. If they truly bond," she paused, "they might change everything." Back in the healing chamber, Jack sat with his shirt off, wounds being cleaned by automed bots. Vora entered quietly, her shoulder freshly wrapped. "I've never fought like that before," she said. Jack replied, "You didn't think, you felt." Vora sat beside him. She reached out, touched his arm. "I don't want to fight you anymore." He looked at her. "Then what do you want?" She hesitated, then whispered, "More of whatever happened today." Jack raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" She nodded once. "Because I've never trusted anyone in battle. Not until now." They stared at each other. Something had changed. Not just in their bodies or their minds, but in their instincts. Secrets of the bite. Jack sat alone in the garden of the palace, under the soft purple sky of Threxia. Strange alien. Flowers opened and closed with the rhythm of his breath. Lights moved through the air like fireflies, but they weren't insects. They were watchers. He knew they were being watched, and he didn't care. His hand still felt warm, from where she had touched him. Suddenly, soft footsteps approached. It was Vora. She wasn't in armor this time. No blades, no masks. Just a simple robe and open eyes. "I spoke with a temple healer today," she said. Jack looked up. "Why?" She sat beside him on the stone bench. "To ask what happens when a human bites a Threxian." Jack tilted his head. "You needed a healer for that?" Vora looked away, her voice quiet now. "There's a legend very old about something called the Cornic bond." Jack listened closely. Vora continued. "It happens when a Threxian is marked, not just wounded, but touched deep, mind to mind, blood to blood. It's not love. It's not control. It's transformation." Jack frowned. "I didn't mean to start that." She turned to him. "But you did." Across the palace, in a sealed archive chamber, Sarek stood before the Empress, holding a glowing scroll. "This is the last record of the Cornic bond," Sarek said. "It hasn't happened in 900 years. The last time it led to a civil war." The Empress's eyes narrowed. "And now it's back. With a human." She stepped closer to the scroll, reading the faded symbols. "When the bond completes, both partners change. Physically, mentally, spiritually. Their fates link forever." Sarek whispered, "And the female loses her old loyalty. She becomes his." The Empress turned away, hiding something in her face. "Prepare the toxin. We may have to remove the human before she chooses him over us." Back in the garden, Vora touched the bite mark on her shoulder. "I wake up burning," she whispered. "Not just my skin, my thoughts, my bones. I feel you, even when you're not near." Jack stared at her, voice low. "Then why are you here now?" She looked at him. "To see if it's real." Silence filled the air. Then without a word, she reached forward. She touched his jaw. Slowly, she leaned in and bit him back. Soft, gentle, but real. Jack froze. His skin burned where she marked him. Vora whispered, "Now you carry it too." Elsewhere in the palace, Sarek walked down a secret hallway, carrying a vial of dark green liquid. Behind her, the Empress's voice played in her comms. Slip it into his drink. Quietly. It will erase the bond. But Sarek paused. She remembered the way Vora had looked after the battle. Not like a soldier. Not like a servant. But like someone finally free. Sarek clenched the vial tight. She whispered, "What if she doesn't want to forget?" That night, in the quiet of the private chambers, Jack stood shirtless near the window, the bite from Vora still red on his skin. She walked in behind him, silent like a shadow. He didn't turn. "You bit me," he said softly. Vora replied, "I needed you to feel it too." He turned to her. "Now we're even." She shook her head. "Now we're bound." Cliffhanger. Far away, deep inside a hidden science lab beneath the palace. A voice echoed from a sealed cryo chamber. Cornic bond detected. Hybrid awakening. Sequence unlocked. Unknown to both Jack and Vora, their bite had triggered something inside the planet itself. Something ancient. Something unstoppable. Rebellion. Within the Empire, a storm gathered over the capital sky. Dark clouds, not made of water, but of charged energy, rippled across the upper atmosphere. Lightning cracked without sound. A sign, the elders believed, of change. Inside the royal palace, the Empress stood before her war council. She didn't wear her royal robe. This time she wore armor. "They've completed the bond," she said flatly. One of the generals slammed the table. "Then kill the human, before she chooses him completely." Sarek spoke up, eyes narrowed. "She already has." Silence followed. The Empress looked down at the glowing map of the city. Red dots blinked across the screen. Loyalists are losing control. Soldiers are refusing orders. Some believe the bond is a prophecy. She turned to the council. A prophecy that ends with Threxian rule falling. Elsewhere in the old stone courtyard, Jack stood across from Vora. Dozens of young warriors watched them train. But it wasn't a match. It was a message. Each move they made was smooth, controlled, and precise. They weren't just practicing, they were performing. Vora slammed her foot down, flipped Jack, but he landed with ease and smiled. Some of the watching warriors began to nod. Whispers spread. "She moves like him now. He trusts her back." No one does that. They're not fighting for power. They're fighting with purpose. After training, a quiet female soldier approached Vora. Her face was nervous. "I want to learn from him," she said. Vora nodded once, and so it began. Later that night, inside the Empress's private war room, Sarek handed over a secret file. It showed holo footage from across the Empire, humans and Threxians training together, eating together, talking in secret. The bond between Jack and Vora was spreading, not physically, not with bites, but with ideas, freedom, balance, unity. The Empress stared at the file, her voice cold and slow. "He doesn't just control her, he's infecting them all." She turned to Sarek. "No more warnings. Prepare the death order. The human dies tomorrow." Back in the underground quarters, Jack lay on his back, breathing slow. Vora sat beside him, brushing her fingers over the faint mark on his neck. "Tomorrow," she whispered. "They will come." Jack didn't move. "Let them." Vora looked into his eyes. "I don't want to lose you." He smiled softly. "You won't." She pressed her forehead against his. "You were never supposed to exist." Jack's voice was steady. "Then let's show them what happens when the impossible lives." The next morning, the Empire gathered in the grand arena once more. But this time, it wasn't a fight. It was an execution. Jack stood in the center, chains around his arms, weapons pointed at him from every side. The Empress stepped forward from the royal platform. She spoke into the loudspeaker. "This human violated sacred law. He has broken a warrior's spirit. He has poisoned our future." Now we end it. The crowd stayed quiet. But behind the walls of the arena, doors began to open. One by one, Threxian warriors entered, not to guard but to stand beside Jack. Sarik stepped forward too. Throwing down her command badge, the Empress's face twisted in rage. "Traitors," she whispered. "Cliffhanger." Suddenly, a roar shook the arena, not from the people, but from below. The ground cracked. Ancient stone split open. From deep underground, something began to rise, a glowing temple no one had seen in thousands of years. At its center, a golden symbol matching the mark on Jack and Vora's skin. Vora grabbed Jack's hand. "It's not just about us anymore." The human king? The arena trembled beneath everyone's feet. Stone split apart as glowing golden roots pushed upward, tearing through the floor. At the center, a tall structure rose, round, ancient, alive. It pulsed like a heartbeat. All eyes turned to Jack and Vora. The symbol glowing on their skin, two interlocking circles, matched the sigil carved into the temple stone. The Empress took a step back, her face pale for the first time. "No," she whispered. "It was just a myth." Jack heard her and stepped forward, even with chains still on his arms. "What's inside that temple?" he asked. The Empress hissed, "The truth we buried." Inside the temple, the doors opened without touch. Jack and Vora entered, the crowd, holding its breath. Even the guards dared not follow. Inside, golden light danced across the walls. Statues of Threxians stood tall, but next to them were carvings of other beings. Smaller, different, human-like. Vora stepped closer. "These aren't just art," she whispered. "They're memories." A massive stone screen lit up as they passed. A voice echoed, not from machines but from the walls themselves. "Welcome, bearers of the Cornic bond. You are the first in many ages." Jack froze. "Who are you?" "I am the last archive of the founding war, when Threxians and early humans once fought together and fell together." Vora gasped. "Humans were part of our past?" The voice continued. "Your bond has reawakened the core. The planet remembers. And now, it offers a choice." A glowing panel rose from the floor, presenting two paths. You may sever the bond, restore the Empire to its old rule, or accept full fusion and become leaders of a new age. Outside the temple, the Empress stood still, her generals waiting for orders. "They're learning the truth," one whispered. "We can still strike." "No," she said quietly. "They're already beyond us." Inside, at the final decision, Jack looked at Vora. "You were born to rule. I wasn't." Vora stepped close. "I was born to fight, but you made me feel alive. I don't want to lead without you." She touched the panel. Jack placed his hand over hers. The light burst upward, filling the chamber. Outside, the sky turned gold. 1 year later, the Empire had changed, not ruled by fear, but by bond. Threxians and humans worked side by side. Warriors trained together. History was restored. At the center of the new capital stood a statue, not of a king, not of a queen, but of two equals, one human, one Threxian.